Alright, so today we're on 6.1, operations on functions. So if you look at the top here, what does the word sum mean? Addition. What does difference mean? Subtraction, product, multiplication, quotient, division. The idea is easy. You know how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide, right? So here's what's new about it. That says f plus g of x. That's not multiplication. That's not what that is. It's f plus g of x. So all you do is you just kind of pull them apart. It means f of x plus g of x. I know that you don't know what f of x and g of x are, but that will come later with the problems, all right? Difference, f minus g of x, is pull it apart again. F of x minus g of x. Product, f times g of x, is f of x times g of x. Quotient, f over g of x, is f of x over g of x, where the denominator cannot be 0. Why is the denominator not allowed to be 0? Hmm? Yeah, why can't we have 0 on the bottom? What's that called? Undefined, right? Yeah, you can't have 0 on the denominator. Okay? So we'll deal with that later. Composition of functions we'll come back to later too. We're just going to do like one thing at a time. So, this first question, number 9. Find the notes, or excuse me, the directions in your homework is going to tell you to find all 4. For the notes, for the sake of time, I just kind of split it up a little bit. So for number 9, we're just going to do the subtraction and the division, but your homework will probably ask you for all 4. I want you to do all 4. Does that make sense? Okay, so here's f of x, it's x minus 1, and here's g of x, it's 5x minus 2. Okay, so I'm going to go over here. I tried to give us some more space. So I'm still on that same question for you. I just wrote it down. Are you guys with me? Okay. So the first thing they wanted you to find was f minus g of x. So that's the same as f of x minus g of x. Are you with me? I'm just doing what the top said, right? So what is f of x? X minus 1. What is g of x? 5x minus 2, right? I'm just substituting. What did I do wrong? I have to have parentheses. Thank you. When you're subtracting more than one thing, you have to use parentheses because you have to distribute that negative. If you had not put parentheses in here, you probably would have gotten it wrong. Okay? So now, that was the hard part. That was the new part. If you look at a question like that, what would you do to simplify it? Distribute the negative, right? So it's going to be x minus 1 minus 5x plus 2. Is everybody okay? Okay. And then simplify again. What do we get? Negative 4x plus 1. So our answer is negative 4x plus 1. After, today, you don't have to write, every single little thing down. See how I wrote that to show myself to pull them apart? If that helps you, great, but if not, you don't have to write that kind of stuff down. Does that make sense? Okay. I'll do domain and range in a second. I want to go ahead and keep going with the questions. So the next part asks you for f over g of x. So that means f of x over g of x. Okay. What is f of x? X minus 1. What is g of x? 5x minus 2. So I've done what they wanted. I've basically substituted, if you will. Okay? Take a minute. Don't say anything out loud yet. Think to yourself if that simplifies. Think to yourself if that reduces, simplifies, divides more, I guess. What do you think? Yes or no? Does it simplify more, or should we just leave it alone? I'm going to tell you that it's done. If you thought it kept going, you're not the only one. If you thought I could simplify, tell me what you thought you could do, and I'll tell you why you couldn't. That's done. You cannot do anything else to it. What did you think you could do, maybe?
I thought maybe the 1.5 would cancel.
Okay, so these are quantities, so they can't cancel unless it's the exact same thing again. So if I had another x minus 1, they would have canceled. So Sam, if you put your hand over this side, and we'd had the 1 over the 2 or something like that, you could keep going. Or some people try to simplify the x and the 5x. Again, if the -1 and the -2 wasn't there, you could. But because this is a quantity, we can't do anything else to it. Does that make sense to you guys now? Okay? So let's go back and do domain and range. The directions actually said state any restrictions on the domain and range. Okay, so that means what's not allowed to happen, if anything. The only time you have to pay attention to it is if there's a fraction. If there's a fraction, what's not allowed to happen? 0 in the denominator, right? Is this a fraction? No. So, no restriction, no restriction. I think I put, what did I put? NA, not applicable, no restriction. I don't really care how you write it. It doesn't matter. Because of the way they asked it, they said list any restrictions. There weren't any. So we would say no restrictions. If they said list the domain and range, you would have said all real, all real. It's the same answer, just different questions. Does that make sense to you? Okay. So on this one, is it a fraction? Yes. So the restriction is the denominator is not allowed to be 0. The 5x minus 2 is not allowed to be 0. So what is x not allowed to be? Solve it. Don't tell me 0. Solve it. What is x not allowed to be? 2/5. Very good. Do you guys get that? The fractions have restrictions. The restriction is the denominator is not allowed to be 0. So set it equal to 0 and say, hey, by the way, that means x can't be this number. Because if I put 2/5 in, isn't that going to give me 0 in the bottom? And we're not allowed to have it. So think for a minute, is that going to be our domain or a range restriction? Don't overthink it. It's a domain. Why is it a domain? Because of the x, right? What's domain? X's. What's range? Y's, right? So it was a restriction on the domain, but not on the range. So I just like put a line through it. You can write no restriction. You can write NA. It really doesn't matter. Okay? Anybody confused? Okay. Thanks. Okay. Are we good? All right, cool. Next one. Same idea. They give you f of x, they give you g of x, right? You just do what they tell you to do. On your homework, they're going to ask you to do all 4. On the notes, to save time, I just asked you for like 2 pieces, okay? So on this one, what do they want us to do? Right here. Add them. So it's f of x plus g of x. Easy enough, right? So I'm going to say what f of x is. What is it? X squared plus, what is g of x? X minus 5. You just write down what they said to do. I just wrote it down. And now you do it if you can. Can I add those together or is it done? It's done, right? That is simplified. None of those are like terms, so that one's done. Is it a fraction? No, it's not. So do I have any restrictions? Nope, nothing, right? NA, no restrictions. Draw a line through it. I don't really care how you do it. Everybody okay? Okay. F times g of x. What do they want us to do now? Multiply them, right? F of x times g of x. So f of x is x squared, and g of x is x minus 5. You just write down what they said to do, and then you do it. So what would we get? X cubed minus 5x squared. Easy enough, right? Did they ask us to factor? No. Did they ask us to solve? No. Is this a fraction? No. So no restrictions on the domain or the range. Anybody confused? Okay, cool. Anyone still need this? All right. So I'm on number 18. So let's look at your directions. I didn't feel like writing everything down. So the directions say, for each pair of functions, find, that's, oh, I have to go back up to the notes starters. Just kidding. I need to go back because we skipped it. So we are right here where I skipped it, okay? This is called composition of functions. So just like in English class, composition here in math class means basically something's going to compose something else. Something's going to be composed in something else. You're going to use this answer to help you get another answer, is what it means. So this says f of g of x. That's an open circle. Do you guys see that that's an open circle, not a closed one like the multiplication? So you need to pay attention because that does not mean multiply. It's an open circle. It means something else. So in like pre-calc, she's going to call it fog or goff, depending on which way it's written, just so you know that. So this means f of g of x, which is also the same as this, f of g of x. These are the same thing. You do the inside first. That doesn't make sense yet, just write it down. So I underlined this part, but it was hard to read. So you do the inside first, whatever it is. So do you guys understand that g of x is what I'm calling the inside? Is that okay? Okay. Inside first. So let me go to the directions because I didn't write them down. For each pair of functions, find f of g and g of f, fog and goff, whatever you want to call it, all right, if they exist. State the domain and range for each composed function. And then I wrote the questions down so we actually have room and I can see it. So here's f. Instead of a polynomial like before, it's just a bunch of ordered pairs. And g, same thing, it's a bunch of ordered pairs. This is super easy to do. You don't need a calculator at all, but it's also very easy to get confused. So if I were you, I might just maybe watch me and then go back and write it down later. That's up to you. You do what you want, but I'm afraid if you blink, you're going to miss it. Okay? So f of g is what we're doing first. F of g of x. It's the same thing. Okay? You do the inside first. So that means I'm going to go to my g function. Do you guys understand that that's what that says? Right? So I'm going to look at my g function, this guy, and I'm going to look at the x's first. Okay? So in my g function, the first x I see is a 6. Okay? That's like input output. So what does 6 give me? Yeah, and so it gives me 8. Do you guys get that? So g of 6 is 8. So right now I'm going to do f of 8 because the answer to this was 8. So on f, what's this usually say? F of what? It usually says f of x, right? So on the f function up here, I'm going to check all the x values. I'm looking for an 8. No, no, yes. What did 8 give me? 12. I started with 6 and I got 12. I'm going to do it again, okay? Do you understand you have to start with the g and you have to start with an x? Is that okay? So I just went to my first one. I looked at the 6. 6 gave me 8. So now it's saying go to your f function with an 8. No, no, yes. 8 gave me 12. So I started with 6, I ended with 12. Okay? If you want to go ahead and write it down, you can. And then we'll finish it up together. That was just one of them, right? We have to check all of them. Okay? So we did the 6, so now I'm going to do negative 12. What does negative 12 give me? Negative 5. So I'm checking for negative 5s in the x values of the other guy, the f guy, right? No, 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 no. Okay, so I don't have to worry about it. Right? 0 gives me 5. Any 5s in the x position? No. 5 gives me 1. Any 1s? Nope. So that was it. 6, 12. So what's my domain of 6, 12? 6. And what's my range? 12. Do you get that the idea of that was really easy? You just kind of point, right? Okay, so now we're going to do g of f this time. So g of f of x. So we start here. You start with the f guys, right? So I'm going to do the negative 7 first. And what's that give me? 0. So any of these have 0 in the x position. Yeah, this one, right? What do I get? 5. So I started with negative 7. Wow, I wish I could write today. Negative 7. And I ended up with 5. Okay? So again, we start with the f guys. I'm going to start with 4. What's 4 give me? 5. Any of these down here start with the 5.
Yes.
Well, was that supposed to be 5 or 3? Oh, that's right. Yeah, okay. So what do I get? What did I start with? 4. And what did I end up with? 1. Do you guys get that? What's the next one I'm going to start with? 8. What's it give me? 12. Any of these have a 12 in the x position? Nope. Negative 3 gives me 6. 6 gives me 8. So negative 3, 8. Is that okay? So what's my domain? Typically we go in order. Yeah, usually it'd be negative 7, negative 3, and 4. If you go out of order, I don't mark it wrong, but typically we go in order. What about your range? Yeah, it'd be 1, 5, 8. If you don't get that right, I'm not going to freak out. It's okay. Do you see what I'm saying? Go to X, go to Y, go to X, go to Y. It's not that terrible. Okay? Anyone still need it? Okay. So same idea, just different ordered pairs. I'm going to do f of g first. F of g of x. So what do I check first? F or g? Inside, g, right? So, I'm going to start with negative 8. What does that give me? 2. No, 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 no. Right? So I'm going to check negative 4. What's that give me? 1. No, 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 no. Remember, we're checking for x's. Okay? 3 gives me negative 3. Any of these have negative 3 as an x value? No. 5 gives me 7. No. So this is undefined. None of them had anything helpful. So because of that, then I just put like no solution on domain and range because there wasn't anything to do. Okay? So now we're going to do g of f of x. Everybody okay with that? What do I check first, g or f? F, the inside first. So 5 gives me 13. No, 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 no. Negative 4 gives me negative 2. No, 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 no. Right? Negative 8 gives me negative 11. Any of those have negative 11 as the x value in the g function? It's a lot of letters, but I think you understood me. 3 gives me 1, positive 1. Anything? Nope. So undefined again. That's not a rule, by the way. One can be undefined and the other one doesn't have to be. That just happened here. So no and no. Anybody confused on the front page? You sure? Okay, back page. Find Fogg and Goff if they exist. State the domain and range for each composed function. So, I'm going to do f of g first. F of g of x. You have to label it or else I don't know what you found. Okay? So it's f of g of x. These are the same thing. I didn't do anything fancy. Okay? This comes first. What is g of x? X plus 5. I literally just replaced g of x with x plus 5. Is everybody okay with that? Okay? Usually this would say f of what? Usually what's it say? F of x is usually what it says. So this means go to your f function, which is 2x, right? And instead of an x, I'm going to put x plus 5, because that's what they said to put in for x. Usually it's f of x, but instead of an x, they said x plus 5. So my f function said 2x, but instead of x, it's really x plus 5. So simplify. What's that give me? 2x plus 10. So my answer is 2x plus 10. We're going to do more if that didn't really sink in yet. Is it a fraction? No. So do I have any restrictions on the domain or the range? No. So the way the question asks this is state the domain and range. So what that means is my domain is all real and my range is all real. If you told me no restrictions, I don't think I would mark that wrong. It's really the same thing. It's just they asked you a different way. If it was a fraction, we'd have to be more careful, right? All right, so now we need to do g of f of x. I'm going to go over here because I'm kind of out of room. Again, these are supposed to be open circles. It's hard for me to see. So that's really g of f of x. So what do I do first? F or g? F, right? So instead of f of x, what is f of x? 2x. Do you guys see how I literally just substituted? Okay? In my g function, what is x supposed to be now? The g function is x plus 5. What am I replacing all the x's with? 2x. So it's just 2x plus 5. Domain? All real. Range? All real. If you followed that, you're algebraic, you're linear. That made sense to you. Great. If you didn't, you're probably more geometric. Let me show you a different option. I always like to show you the super proper way first, but now I'm going to show you what you can do instead if that's easier for you, if this was hard to follow. You do this first, right? Literally, all you're going to do is put f into g. So we're going to put f into g, 2x plus 5. That's what we just did. I just wrote it all out. I'm going to do another one. Okay? We're going to do the same thing. I'm going to do f of g of x first, which is f of g of x. Same thing. This comes first. Okay? So f of x minus 6, because that's what g of x is. I didn't do anything on my own. I just used what they gave me. Do you understand that? So typically they'd be like, hey, f of x is that, right? But they said f of x minus 6 instead, right? So my f function, that's my f function, isn't it? With some blanks. The blanks are where the what's were. The blanks are where the x's were, because we're replacing x's with x minus 6's. Because that's what the problem said to do. Is that okay? Okay? This is not x squared plus 36. Stop doing that. Okay? You either write it twice in FOIL or you do the actual shortcut that exists. So in Algebra 2, from here on out, I'm always going to do the shortcut. So you can off to the side write it twice in FOIL if you want to, but I'm going to do the shortcuts from now on. If you need help with those, you're going to see me in win period. So the shortcut is going to be the first thing squared, the last thing squared, times each other times 2. That's the shortcut for that. The first thing squared, the last thing squared, times each other times 2. And so because of the first day back, I'm going to slow it down for you. So x minus 6 times x minus 6 is what we really did, just with a shortcut. So it's x squared minus 6x minus 6x plus 36, which is why it's times each other times 2. That's why the shortcut exists. You could FOIL if you had to, right? So this is going to be plus 6x minus 36 minus 2. I just finished it out. Combine like terms. So I'm going to get x squared, minus 6x minus 2. If you combine like terms, is that okay? Okay? Is that a fraction? No? So all real? All real. So now I'm going to do g of f of x. Okay? I'm going to erase this so I actually have room. Does anyone still need it? No? Okay. So this time I'm doing g of f. Did I erase that? I didn't save this before. Dang it. Oh well. Okay. G of f of x is g of f of x. Okay, this isn't super fancy. Like, I just rewrote it. No big deal. What do I work with first? F. F goes into what? Where's it going to go? What's the only thing that's written down? There's an F and there's a G. Okay, so you can do what we just did again if you want to, but you guys are looking a little cross-eyed. So this literally means put F into G. That's all it means. Put F into G. Okay, so I'm going to put F into G. So x squared plus 6x minus 2 is taken care of, minus that extra 6 that they had there. You see how I just put F into G? Okay, and combine like terms. So x squared plus 6x minus 8. Domain, all real. Range, all real, because it was not a fraction. I'm happy to do it the way I just did it, too. I just always like to give you more than one option. A lot of you guys are, some of you are algebraic and some of you are geometrics. That way I kind of hit everybody. Well, you know what I mean. Okay? Okay, if you didn't like that, I'll go back and do it another way for you later. Okay, so where am I at? 43? If f of x is that, g of x is that, and h of x is that, find each value. These are actually a lot easier in my opinion. Where do I start, h or f? F. In my f function, right here, what do I replace x with? Here's my f function. What goes instead of x? Negative 5, right? So I get negative 25. The answer to this is negative 25. So now I'm looking for h of negative 25. I'm going to put the answer to this into here. So my h function, x squared plus 6x plus 8, what do I replace all the x's with? Negative 25s. And then you get out a calculator, right? You can use your cell phones till Monday if you need to. So you either have a calculator or you have a phone. I assume you have one or the other. So plug that in. Be careful. You probably need to use parentheses like I did. And what do you get? $483. This answer is 483. If you just did this and circled it, that's fine too. I don't really care. Anybody not get it and need help? Okay. So now we're going to do this one. What comes first? G of whatever, right? So my g function is negative 2x plus 1. That is my g function. What do I replace x with? 3a. Simplify, what do I get? Negative 6a plus 1. So that's my answer to g of 3a. This answer is now completely replaced with this. Or basically, put this answer into the other one. Okay? So my f function is 5x. What am I saying x is? Negative 6a plus 1. So what do I get? Negative 30a plus 5. I think those are the easiest ones personally. Anybody confused? Okay. Anyone still need it? Okay, last one. Same idea. Where do I start? This says f of g of h of 2. H of 2. Okay, right? You start with the insidemost one. So I'm going to go to my h function. I'm going to put all those x's as 2's. And what do you get for that? H of 2 is 1. Anybody not get 1 and need help? So now my problem says f of g of 1, because h of 2 I'm replacing with a 1. So what's g of 1? Negative 4 times 1 plus 3. Negative 1, yeah. So now I'm taking that answer and putting it into f. What is negative 1 plus 2? 1. Final answer is 1. You take this answer, you put it in here. You take that answer, you put it in here. That's a composition. You take the answer you had and you use it for something else. Ask me a question. Or would I lose you? You sure? Okay. Yeah.